My brother laughed in my face when our billionaire father left him the $10 million mansion and left me just an old, greasy toolbox. Until I found the false bottom inside. Growing up, I always thought my father was a man of absolute fairness. He built a real estate empire from nothing, starting out as a humble mechanic in a small garage in Ohio. He worked 16-hour days, came home with black grease under his fingernails, and slowly built a life that most people only dream about. But as the money grew, my family began to split at the seams. My older brother Julian saw our father's wealth as a birthright. He spent his 20s driving imported sports cars, throwing lavish parties in the Hamptons, and constantly asking for advances on his inheritance. I chose a different path. I worked alongside my father, learning the trade, respecting the value of a hard-earned dollar, and managing the day-to-day operations of his first original workshop, which he kept open just to remember where he came from. When our father passed away last winter, the reading of the will felt like a formal execution of my place in the family. We sat in a high-rise law office overlooking Manhattan, surrounded by polished mahogany and cold glass. Julian sat across from me in a tailored suit, a smirk already playing on his lips. He knew what was coming, or at least he thought he did. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading the final wishes of a man who had accumulated over $300 million in assets. First came the real estate holdings, the luxury vehicles, and the historic estate in upstate New York. Every single bit of it, valued at nearly $10 million, was bequeathed directly to Julian. I sat in dead silence, waiting for my name to be called. I didn't care about the mansions or the luxury cars, but I expected my father to leave me the workshop, or at least a nod of recognition for the decade I spent standing by his side. Then came the final clause of the will. The lawyer looked up from his papers, his eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and pity. He stated that to his younger son, my father left a single item currently stored in the back of his old garage. A heavy, rusted steel toolbox from 1978. Julian couldn't contain himself. He burst out laughing right there in the attorney's conference room, slamming his hand on the table. He told me that Dad finally saw me for what I truly was, just a mechanic meant to clean up other people's messes while he lived like royalty. I didn't say a word. I signed the paperwork, walked out of that skyscraper, and drove straight to the old workshop. The building was cold, dark, and smelled of engine oil and memories. Resting on the main workbench was the chest, a heavy, beaten-up red metal box covered in scratches, grease, and spots of deep orange rust. For 3 days, that box sat on my kitchen table while Julian made headlines in the business news for liquidating parts of our father's estate to fund his reckless investments. Every time I looked at that toolbox, I felt a sting of betrayal. Why would a father who claimed to love both his sons leave one with an empire and the other with a piece of junk? Late on a Thursday night, unable to sleep, I decided to clean the box. If this was all I had left of my father's legacy, I was going to restore it. I brought out a bottle of metal polish, a few shop rags, and a set of screwdrivers. I emptied out the top tray, pulling out ancient wrenches, worn-down sockets, and greasy pliers that my dad had used 40 years ago. As I wiped down the interior base of the steel chest, I noticed something unusual. The outer depth of the box didn't match the depth on the inside. There was a discrepancy of nearly 2 inches between the bottom floor of the tray and the outer metal casing. I leaned in closer with a flashlight. Near the back hinge, partially hidden under a thick layer of dried factory grease, was a small, flush metal pin. It didn't belong to any locking mechanism I had ever seen on standard tools. My heart started racing. I took a flathead screwdriver, carefully scraped away the grime, and pressed hard against the pin. A faint click echoed through the quiet kitchen. The bottom plate of the toolbox shifted slightly, popping up just 1/4 of an inch. I inserted a thin putty knife under the edge and lifted the heavy steel false bottom out of the chest. Underneath lay a velvet-lined compartment, completely untouched by time, dust, or rust. Resting inside was a thick, leather-bound ledger and a series of sealed legal envelopes bearing the official seal of a premier Swiss private bank. I opened the ledger first. On the very first page, in my father's precise, sharp handwriting, was a note addressed directly to me. To my youngest son, it read, "If you are reading this, it means you had the patience, the humility, and the respect to look beyond the surface of what seems broken. You always understood that real value isn't displayed on the outside for the world to envy." The letter went on to explain everything. My father knew Julian's character all too well. He knew that giving Julian immediate control of the tangible real estate assets would satisfy his vanity, but ultimately lead to his financial downfall, because he never learned how to build or protect anything. My father had structured his true wealth over 30 years ago. The mansions and the cars were just the flashy shell of his estate, heavily mortgaged and tied up in complex corporate debts that Julian would soon have to answer for. The real fortune was right here in this rusted box. Tucked beneath the ledger were original physical stock certificates for major blue-chip tech and energy companies purchased in the early 1990s, untouched and compounding for decades. Along with the stock certificates were ownership documents to an offshore trust account holding over $200 million in liquid assets managed secretly in Zurich. The only way to claim the trust was by presenting the original bearer certificates hidden right in front of me. My father had designed the ultimate test of character. He gave Julian the illusion of wealth to teach him a lesson he refused to learn in life, while entrusting the true foundation of our family's future to the son who valued honest work. 2 months later, the news broke. The creditors came knocking on the door of the $10 million mansion. Julian had mismanaged the property taxes, defaulted on the underlying mortgages he didn't know existed, and was facing complete bankruptcy. He called me in a panic, begging for help, still assuming I was living hand-to-mouth on a mechanic's wage. I agreed to meet him at our father's old workshop. When Julian arrived, looking pale and defeated, he saw me sitting at the workbench. The old red toolbox was fully restored now, shining with a fresh coat of paint. Next to it sat the official documentation confirming my position as the sole trustee of our father's global empire. He stared at the papers in disbelief, his jaw dropping as he realized that the old piece of grease-stained metal he laughed at was worth more than 20 mansions combined. I looked at my brother, closed the heavy lid of the toolbox with a solid, metallic thud, and told him it was time he finally learned how to build something of his own.